All right, we're on Kuf Amud Aleph 100a. We are it's if you count down, if you go to the left side, the widest set of lines, you count down 1, 2, 3, 4, and it's the middle of that line where it says Meisvei, and there's a small little Dalid. Yeah. So the Gemara mentioned yesterday, it was talking about proper respect for Torah and those who study Torah and those who teach Torah, and in that discussion, the Gemara raised a statement made by Rabbi that was made fun of by a student, and that was an example of someone who disrespected Torah. Now that statement by Rabbi was related to Mashiach's coming. Specifically, he said that God's going to make these massive stones, precious stones, out of which God's going to fashion gates through which the people will walk into Jerusalem. Specifically, the gates are going to be 20 amas high, 20 cubits high. That's how big the openings are going to be. Of that, the Gemara is going to raise a contradiction. And in so doing, the Gemara is getting us back to our discussion about Mashiach's coming. Because we're talking about the era of Mashiach. So it says the Gemara like this. Meisvei. Gemara raises a contradiction. Now, you may remember that whenever the Gemara introduces a question with the word Meisvei, it means two statements of a similar validity, if you will, right? Not from a higher generation or earlier generation, but from the same halachic weight in terms of the generations of when these statements appear. So, what's the seeming contradiction? Says the Gemara like this: the verse reads in Vayikra.
Just before the talk,
yeah.
In all the brachas we'll get.
I am God who took you out of Egypt. So the first piece of Oilach Eskim Kamiyas, I will take you out, or I'll walk with you, or I'll make you walk. Kamiyas, standing upright. The very simple meaning of the verse is you'll stand with pride, with dignity, not in a unlike leaving Egypt where they were rushed out and half the people stayed behind, 80% of the people stayed behind, and they were just made it out by the skin of their teeth. What's the expression?
Skin of their teeth. Yeah.
Skin of their teeth. Here it's you're going to walk out upright, proud, without any shame. That's the literal meaning. But taking it a little further, and specifically since the verse has an extra vav, the second vav, koimamius, the second vav, makes it into a double plural, right? The Suff itself makes it into plural, that I will take all of you out walking upright, talking about the multiple people. But then it says, I will take you all in uprights, making the standing part plural, not just the amount of people plural, but the fact that we're walking out upright. The upright itself is in plural. So it's a bit of an anomaly. And therefore the Gemara teaches like this. Meir says, Masayim Amma. That means each person is going to be 200 cubits high. Why? Because we have to go, as the Marsha says, let's look at the way God created the world at the beginning of time. Certainly the way the Jews will be at the time of Mashiach's coming is not going to be any less than the way it was when God created the world to begin with. And when Adam Rishon was originally created, the first man, he was 100 cubits high. And therefore, if we are told we're going to be standing uprights in plural, so we're going to be at least double that which the primary man was. The primary man was 100. We're plural, so we're going to be 200 amas high. Kishtei kaimes Adam Rishon. We're going to be like two of the heights of Adam Rishon. Adam Rishon was 200 amas, 100 amas, and we're double 200 amas. That's Rabbi Meir's view. Rabbi Yehuda says, Kuf Amma. We're going to be not 200 amas high, but we'll be 100 amas. 100 amma high. That's how tall we'll be. Keneged corresponding to Heichal v'Kaislav. The Heichal is the chamber, the primary chamber, the sanctuary, primary chamber of the temple and its walls. What exactly it means and how do we get to 100 amas? Rashi has two different versions. But the bottom line is, let's just take the first version of Rashi. If you were to count up all the walls going in every direction, not in its height, but in its length, throughout Shlomo Melech's sanctuary, the sanctuary of the temple, all the walls and their length equal 100. And actually goes through the calculation as to exactly how long each wall was, and you combine them all, making it 200. So our height will be corresponding to the length of the walls surrounding the sanctuary within the temple. Shenemar, as the verse reads, Asher, this is in Tehillim, Asher Bonenu, that our children will be kinetiyim, like the planted ones. Migdulim b'nereseim b'neresenu kizovis machtuvis tavnes hechel, and our our children will grow like that which is implanted, and our young ones, our daughters, like the carved out corners, if you will, of the structure of the temple. So literally, it probably means that we're going, like the same thing as Kamias. It literally means it's a poetic way of saying that we're going to be proud and strong like the temple stands. But if you take it in its more literal sense, that literally we're going to be like the structure of the temple, then our height will be like the structure of the temple. The structure of the temple, as we just described, is 100 amma, all the walls and its length combined. So that's what we be. Okay, so this is the literal meaning of the Gemara. We're going to get into a little deeper meaning in a moment. But this is the literal meaning. That our Meir and Rabbi are disputing, is man going to be 200 amas high when Mashiach comes, or 100 amas high? And therefore the question becomes, Rabbi Yochanan, who said that God's going to take these grand, precious stones and carve out entrances to Jerusalem that are 20 amas high. How does a 100 amma tall person get through a 20 amma tall wall? He's got to be crawling, or not even crawling, he's got to be like an army crawl or something. So there's a seeming contradiction. That's the Gemara's question on this literal level. If the Gemara answers, Ki kam Rabbi Yochanan, what did Rabbi Yochanan mean when he said 20 amas by 10 amma? 20 amas high, carved out of these stones at the entrance of Jerusalem, and 10 amas wide. The kivoy, I'm not sure if I pronounce this word, the bezika, to cut out holes through which the wind will come in, meaning windows. So the door itself will obviously have to be more than either 100 amas high, according to Rabbi Yehuda, or more than 200 amas high, according to Rabbi Meir. But their windows is what Rabbi Yochanan was speaking about, and that the windows themselves are 20 amas by 10 amas, and that's how the wind gets in. Okay, let's go a little bit deeper here. And Rabbi has a beautiful talk on this Gemara, on the dispute between Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Meir in terms of Kaimimiyos. Rabbi asks a number of questions. Rabbi borrows quite a bit from the Marsha and relies on that a bit. But Rabbi asks the following a number of questions. The main question becoming, why is the Tehillim? Well, let's just put it this way.
That's a question.
Sorry, yeah.
What would be 200 amas in our measurement again, approximately?
300 feet?
Yeah, 300 and 400 feet.
Talking about very tall, between 300.
2 feet. It's like 1.75.
Depends on which opinion, but yeah.
350 feet.
Talking about very, very, very tall people.
I thought, so I can understand what's the problem with the height here of someone.
What do you mean?
That's how can they fit in those small?
The question was, how can they fit in the doors that are only 20 amas high if they're standing 100 amas high?
100, 200.
Oh, 20 amas high.
The door is 20, and the people, according to Rabbi Yochanan's original statement, the door is 20 amas high, and the people are 100 amas or 200 amas. How do they fit in those doors?
How could they be that high? How could they be that tall?
This is the miracle of the Messianic age,
Okay.
if we're going to take it in its literal sense.
Yeah, it can be figurative, but it's more understanding is definitely literally.
But certainly many do understand it literally.
Yeah, but
And the
Rambam would say no, because Rambam says there's no difference between this world.
Yeah, unless it's talking about the later stage.
Later stage.
But either way, we'll leave it out for now. We talked about it in the past. We'll leave
The
it.
temple will still be the first stage, though.
Say it again.
The temple will be the first stage anyway. So
The first.
First
Yes,
stage.
the table will be the first stage.
Could be
Yeah, but the
everything.
walls of Jerusalem aren't talking about temples, but the walls of Jerusalem.
Yeah, but still, you have to.
Yeah, the walls could be changed later over time. That's not it. Anyway, okay. So let's understand this a little bit. There's a number of questions that Rabbi asks on this Gemara. The first of them being, how does Rabbi Yehuda understand the verse which says Kaimim Miyos? That's the most basic question. The original verse which says Va'olech eskem Kaimim Miyos, God says, I will take you out upright. And the extra vav, as we explained, makes it plural. 2 uprights. Which is how Rabbi Yehuda came to the conclusion that we're twice the size of the original. Rabbi Meir brought to the conclusion that we're twice the size of the original height of Adam, which would be Adam being 100, we're twice the size because of the uprights in the plural, making it 200. So how does Rabbi Yehuda explain that verse? How does he explain it? According to Rabbi, we're only 100 amas high, which means we're the same height as the original standing of man. How does he explain the plurality of kaimamius, which implies 2 uprights, or a doubled upright? That's the most basic question. And they've asked a number of other questions, but that I think to me is the most basic of them. How does he explain this?
Also, the view, how would Rabbi Meir explain the pasuk until?
That's less problematic. But the question also becomes like, why did Tehillim?
Yeah,
why did Gemara resolve the things? The verses themselves are a contradiction, as it were. Why would the pasuk in Tehillim say would be like the building of the sanctuary within the temple, instead of saying what the verse said, and God speaks and says, we're going to be like double the height of people, or the height of people used to be? Why would they tell him switch it? Another thing that Rabbi points to, and this helps Rabbi get to his point, as it were, is that Rabbi Meir, keep on confusing the names. Rabbi Yehuda, when he says that people are only 100 amas high, what does he say? Neged heichal v'kaisav, in correspondence to the size of the temple. What happened to corresponding to people?
How you can get inside the same height?
That was the Gemara's question. We answered that. The Gemara discussed that a second. But the question was, why did Yehuda say, the verse just finished saying that you're going to be kaimamius like uprights of people, and now you're saying we're going to be the heichal corresponding to the temple? What's going on? So it explains like this. In Chassidus and Kabbalah, there are 2 divine energies. Well, there are many, obviously, but there are 2 modes of divine revelation. One's referred to as Ur Yashar, which means the straight light, literally. And then there's Ur Chayzer, which means the returning light. What does that mean? There's one type of divine energy in which the system flows as it's supposed to, coming from top down. God invests a certain amount of energy. It goes through a long process known as Seder Shtalshlus, the chain of events, and in each realm, the divine energy is slowly diminished to the point that it makes it down to this physical world. That's Ur Yashar. Everything's going straight the way it's supposed to. The second light, which is called returning light, the Ur Chayzer, that comes once the light gets to the end of the line. It's like the mirror effect, which is if you had a light and you shined it against the mirror that was very far away, so just before that light hits the mirror, it's very dimmed out. The second it hits the mirror, it doubles in its returning light. Right? So at the end, it actually intensifies in its return. That's Ur Yashar versus Ur Chayzer. And Kabbalah uses it to explain all kinds of things, like certain chidushim, certain creation, something from nothing, is what's primarily seen in our physical world more than spiritual worlds. Right? Spiritual worlds evolve one from the other, but the physical world has to be created from something from nothing. And where's that extra power come from? If it's only getting diminished as it goes on. That comes from Ur Chayzer, because at the end it bounces, it becomes more intensified, and other things in Kabbalah are explained based on this principle of when the light gets to the end of the line, it doubles its intensity in Ur Chayzer in its return effect.
What if the house to the moon?
Sorry?
When the Mashiach comes, and the moon, the moon is supposed to be as bright as the sun.
Yeah.
Because the moon could be like a mirror too; it reflects the sun.
Yeah. Well, actually, the moon's an interesting point, because you don't see the light of the sun till it gets to the moon. Only when it gets to the moon do you see the light. Why? Because the light's too dim by the time it gets to the moon. Right. But once it hits the moon, it becomes stronger because of the Ur Chayzer effect. Yeah. Right, but it doesn't connect. I don't know if it connects this to the moon becoming as bright as the sun. Anyway, so these are 2 types of energy. These 2 types of energy are reflected in 2 types of service of Hashem. The Ur Yashar, the straight light, is reflected in the service of the Tzaddik, the one who never messes up. Everything's going the way it's supposed to do. Right? He's living in a spiritual place, and he's a transmitter for divine energy in a very proper, unbroken system.
Very ordered existence.
Ordered, yes, tikkun, very structured. But then comes the Ball Teshuva, who's at the end of the line, as it were, and his light, his divine energy, his service of Hashem is Ur Chayzer, is returning, a place where he was far and returning. So now says the Rebbe like this. When the verse says,
he's in darkness.
Sorry?
Until the light hits him, he's kind of in the darkness.
In the darkness. And then he returns with a more intense.
The hits get the light.
That's right.
Yeah.
Now there's a virtue in each one. In Kabbalah, the virtue of Ur Yashar is that it's more it's more of a revelation of God in the sense that it's easier to comprehend. It's a system that's orderly and functional. Whereas the returning light is less easy to comprehend because it comes out of nowhere, as it were, but it expresses a certain depth of Hashem that can't be expressed in the order. Right? Like I said, the creation of something. Nothing comes from this returning light. There's a double intensity that comes out of almost out of nowhere. Come to the end of the line, and there's intensity. Where does that come from? It comes from the essence of Hashem, who has the capacity to do any of these things. Right? So, from the perspective of, orderly, structured relationship with Hashem, the tzaddik has the virtue. But in terms of the quantum leap reaching to the very essence of Hashem, the Ball Teshuva has that virtue. And therefore it comes there and says like this. When the verse says, I will take you upright, it's talking about a combination of these two. When Mashiach comes, each Jew will have both virtues. The virtue of the tzaddik, the structured system of relationship with Hashem, and the virtue of the radical, intense relationship to Hashem that gets straight to the end. It's plural, it's double. Which explains why it's specifically 100. Because a person has 10 faculties, right, corresponding to the 10 spheres. Each of the 10 are comprised of the other 10, totaling 100. So 100 is like the totality of a person's experience in its completion. 10 is itself in its totality. 10 times 10, making it its full totality. So other modalities created as a complete whole person, 100 amas. The Mashiach comes, and we have both experiences, both completions of man, both the completion of the tzaddik's experience plus the completion of the Ball Teshuva's experience. It's kaimamius, it's double. It's double the upright. Now here comes the dispute between Rabbi and Buddha, says the Rabbi. The question is like this. These two experiences that each Jew is going to experience when Mashiach comes, the experience of the tzaddik and the experience of Ball Teshuva, are they experienced simultaneously, or there are two elements of my experience? If there are two elements of my experience, one of my experience is my relationship to Hashem as a tzaddik, one part of myself, and another part of myself is my relationship to Hashem as a Ball Teshuva. So then, if that's the case, there are two different experiences, then I'm coming mius in 200. My double experience of the two revelations are not combined, they're separate, and thus I got to be 200 amas. 100 for one type of experience, but tzaddik, and 100 for my other type of experience, Ball Teshuva. So let's come mius, we make you 200. But Rabbi Yehuda says, no. The double experience that you're going to have, both being Yashar, the tzaddik experience of Hashem, the direct relationship that's uncomplicated, and then the Ball Teshuva experience are actually going to be simultaneous and within the one and the same experience. So it's true, it's a doubled upright, but it still remains 100 amas. So getting back to the original question, how did Rabbi Yehuda explain the verse Kadamius, which seems to be plural, and still remaining 100? It is plural, it is double, but that double experience is so integrated that it's experienced in one at the same time, unless you still remain 100 as you are doubled. The 100 itself is doubled, in that it's a double experience in each one of these things. Deborah puts in a footnote, how could we imagine the tshuva and tzaddik going on simultaneously? How could you imagine it? So Deborah said that how fully it's going to be experienced, you can't really experience this until Mashiach comes, because it's the ultimate paradox. To experience simultaneously a relationship to Hashem that's unbroken, and then at the same time and in the same experience a relationship with Hashem that's dramatic and extreme and drastic. Right? If they're in two different parts of me, then okay, I can experience sometimes this and sometimes that. But when it's simultaneous, how do you experience that? So there says a kind of slight version of that nowadays is a teshuvah that comes from where God comes close to you. So usually the tshuva comes out of a place of my darkness. That's the regular Ball Teshuva experience. That's that's the returning light. I come from a place at the end of the line and I'm bouncing back. But if the teshuva comes because God came to me, so I have the Yashar, God comes to me, but it's still teshuva, I'm going back. So that's a kind of experience where it's a combination of both. It's a little bit of it, but when Mashiach comes, we'll experience that fully integrated, these two things. Okay, so now you have an explanation how Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Meir both explained Kaimamius. Doubled expression. One gets to 200, one gets to 100. The 200 is because the two different experiences happen not simultaneously, but they're two different parts of my experience. One like the tzaddik, one like the Ball Teshuva, each one getting 100 in the totality of the experience, and thus 200. The other one says it's a doubled kaimamius, but it happens simultaneously because you're experiencing both the tzaddik and the Ball Teshuva experience simultaneously as one, and thus it's true, it's kaimamius, it's a plural of upright, but the plural is such that it's integrated and thus remains 100. Now what does that do to the temple? So explains them like this. From where does you get the power to experience two opposites simultaneously? And there Rabbi Yehuda says, Keneged, corresponding to the temple. The temple is that place which allows and brings about this idea of the paradox, the two experiences, both from above to below and below to above, the Tzaddik and the Ball Teshuva. How is that? Even in the simple halacha, there's two different elements to the base of Mikdash. One is va'asi mikdash, you make for me a Mikdash. The Jew has to create that experience above to below to above, and then v'shechanti b'soichem, God says, I dwell in it. It's from above to below. And like we have with, the famous dispute about the Rambam and the Ramban, which are not a contradiction, but are talking at from different angles. We've had occasion to talk about this dispute a number of times, and that is the Rambam says, Maimonides writes, what's the definition of the temple? Jew has to create a place where he can serve God, below to above. The Ramban defines the temple not as a place where a Jew builds to serve God, but rather a place where God's presence can be felt. And thus for him the primary is not the altar where we do our service, but the primary is the Holy of Holies where God is. Whereas from the Rambam's perspective, the altar is the primary because that's where we do our service. So they're talking at two different elements. And the truth is they come together in the temple. So the temple is that place in which the ultimate paradox of God's truth, above to below and below to above, is offered to the Jew. The Jew can have the paradox of where he's serving Hashem both as a tzaddik and a Ball Teshuva simultaneously. And thus the Meir says, you know how I get to Kamemiyas, you know how I get to a double upright that's still in 100 amas because it's a double experience? Keneged Hechel, corresponding to the experience of the temple, because the temple was that ultimate paradox. That ultimate paradox is also expressed in the Holy of Holies itself. Famous statement of the Gemara, which is that Mokim ha'arin einim anamida, that the space that the ark took up, the space that the ark took up within the Holy Holy didn't take up space. Meaning to say, if you were to measure it, you would get a certain measurement. If you measured the space between it and the wall on both sides, you would get the measurement, the totality of the wall to wall. So what happened to the space that was occupied by the ark? It took up space, and yet simultaneously didn't take up space. The ultimate paradox. It doesn't take up space, that's a miraculous experience. It does take up space, that's a natural experience. And it's not just that the miraculous experience overrides the nature, where the Ur Yashar overrides the Ur Chayzer, or the Ur Chayzer overrides the Ur Yashar. The Tzaddik experience overrides the Ball Teshuva experience, or the Ball Teshuva overrides the Tzaddik. They both happen simultaneously. And thus the temple, says Rameir, that's how I got to the conclusion that when the verse says Kamemi is double upright, it's not two experiences, but one simultaneous experience that compromises two elements, both the Tzaddik and the Ball Teshuva. And thus the answers all the questions in a very, very beautiful way, without compromising any of the words in the Gemara. It's very, very, very beautiful. Okay.
It's like the Nissan Tishrei thing.
Yeah, the Nissan Tishrei and the combination. That's correct.
Yeah.
That's correct.
Even Torah itself, in a way, could be looked at that, because in a way, Torah is a gift that comes down like Nissan and stuff. So now what? But then you invest in it, so you go up. So
that's correct.
It's like
that's correct.
Always that kind of.
That's right. So
interplay.
That's right. Usually the model is, in that context, is Torah versus Tefillah. Torah doesn't come from how I feel. What does God feel? So it's above to below in some way. And my investment in prayer, in Tefillah, in Torah, is I'm trying to work my way inside the revelation of God. So even the above to below within Torah is in the context of God's above. Even my below to above in Torah is in the context of God's above to below. Right. I have to put aside the way I feel, and
it's like Ball Teshuva thing. Like my investment
but it's in the context of what God gave me.
Right.
But prayer is the reverse. Prayer starts from where I feel. That's the whole point. I have to relate to Hashem from my experience, right? Sulam Mutzav Arza, it's a ladder that starts at the earth and goes up. So it has to start from where I am. I can't ignore my experience. It has to come from my experience. So it's the ultimate below to above. But it's below to above in but even my capacity to be able to climb from below to above is because God granted it. Right. So it also has an element of above to below. But the above to below is within the context of my below to above.
And it's even in the context of Torah.
That's right. So each one has their.
I wouldn't be praying had I not had a Torah to tell me that
I know how to pray and gives me the power to pray. And
right.
That's correct. So the prayer is below to above, and in that context there is an above to below, and Torah is above to below, and in that context there is a bit of below to above. That's how we can imagine it, if you will. Okay. Yev Shabbos. Okay, stop over here because the Gemara now is going to get to analyzing, going back to some of the statements made before in the context of respect for the sages And we had a few stories in which different sages made different statements about Mashiach's coming. And the Gemara is now going to analyze a number of those. And what we just described, even though I haven't seen it directly related, will actually help us inform some of the conversations that will follow from here. One of Shabbos and a good day, everybody.